What's good, folks? My name is Vin. My clap. And this is the TheVinDiagram, a channel dedicated to the intersections of my life experiences. Here, you'll see me go through book deep dives and habit experiments that I conduct on myself. This is not a book summary video, but a video about the things I actually learned from the books that I read in the month of January. I finished 6 books and I'm excited to share with you what I learned. Also, would you be willing to hit the subscribe button? You don't even have to pause the video actually. Just hit subscribe and I hope you can keep watching more of my videos. Book 1 is Survival of the Thickest by Michelle Buteau. If you haven't seen the Netflix series with the same title, please do. Your heart needs that kind of love. The show is about a love for yourself, your community, your sense of purpose. This is my first memoir of 2024, and I gotta say, it was a joy to listen to her life. Michelle Buteau's memoir is a reminder to act like the main character of your life, and you just might be. So tell good stories and make people laugh. Lesson number 1 from this book is that there is an American Stroke Society, and it is not for people that have medical strokes. Lesson number 2, don't let family make decisions about your wedding. Honor yourself. It is your day. There's a newsletter called The Financial Samurai that says you shouldn't spend more than 10% of your combined income on your wedding. I just think that for my own accomplishment of a marriage, I should not have to spend upwards of $20,000 to make other people happy. But that's just me. Lesson number 3, it is so common to have miscarriages and we should normalize talking about them. And if you don't know what a miscarriage is, it's when a pregnancy does not go to full term. My favorite quote in this book was, "Whatever you want, I want that for you." It is a reminder to go after the things that you want and that wishing ill of others serves no purpose. The next book is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. I have been reading this book for over a year. It was 1,300 pages, and I gotta say, I will never reread it again, and I am not recommending it to anybody. It is, to be fair, an immersive story about a world intersecting with reality, the lives of 2 people obviously building up to reunite. Lesson number 4, there is a big emphasis on breasts in Japanese pop culture. It shouldn't be a lesson, but it still surprises me when I see it even in a book. It's just unnecessary. Once a character remembers another's character's breasts, their supple nipple, how the breast is rounded in just the right firm amount. And they always made an emphasis of saying, oh, but you know, I'm not gay. And so it just reiterates this lack of LGBT inclusivity in Japan. And I'm a really sex positive person when it comes to talking about physical things that happen to our bodies, our desires. But these mentions never brought the plot forward. They were just there to talk about boobs. And ultimately, they're there to sexualize the female body. Oftentimes, someone was just climbing a stairway, and I don't know why I thought about boobs would be relevant in that stairway, but that's how that just appeared in the book over and over again. Lesson number 5, I saw an experience of casual racism. One of the main character, Mamie, that's her name, asked someone for a gun, but not quite a Filipino copy, but a dependable one. I'm Filipino. I'm gonna leave it at that. Lesson number 6, the worship of a penis in Japan is again as common as the objectification of breasts in Japan. Quote, "His penis was harder and more polished, his cum heroic." Like, what? Low-key, I'm mad I read this book. I am mad. A lesson learned. Diary of a CEO by Bartlett. This book really started the year off right. Stephen Bartlett is a highly successful businessman, and you might know him from his podcast, Diary of a CEO. Lesson number 9, create an obligation to teach. He says that you don't become a master because you're able to obtain knowledge. You become a master when you're able to release it. This is a lesson that I am trying to actualize through making content like this. I read a lot, I consume a lot of interviews, and I find myself now in a position where I want to share that knowledge. Lesson number 10, how to challenge an existing belief with new evidence. He talks about these factors that you need to understand when you're presenting new evidence to somebody. A person's current evidence, their confidence in current evidence, the new evidence, and their confidence in that new evidence. He says that you should not try to argue or to break someone's evidence. You have to add new evidence and share the most positive impact of that new evidence. It's not worth your time to rip that apart. Find new evidence, and you are much more likely to be able to convince people of it. Lesson number 11. Our self-story develops as we collect more evidence throughout our adult life. He talks a lot about the story that we tell ourselves, our self-story, but it's also the story that we tell other people. To create new evidence for your life story, you have to create new experiences. You have to change your actions because your choices create new evidence about you. And that means you have to try new things often. You are dynamic. Don't stick to this binary definition of you. You are so much more malleable than you believe. Lesson number 12. Your body is the only vessel you'll ever use to explore the world. And it is also the only house that you can truly call home. In theory, I know this, but I am still a ways away from treating my body exactly how I want to. Lesson number 13, semantic satiation. This is when a word or phrase becomes unrecognizable due to repetition. This happened a little bit earlier when I was saying evidence, and as I said evidence over and over and over, I was like, it's happening. Your brain during semantic satiation starts to tune out what that word actually means, and it stops committing resources to trying to understand that word or phrase. And in case you didn't get it, here's another example. Humor. I don't even know what that word means anymore. Lesson number 14. Your context is valuable, but your skills are worthless. But what makes you unique in this world is your context, your experience, your background, and how you apply that context to your skills. This is what makes you valuable. It's how you can implement who you are, how you got to where you are, and what kind of person you want to become in order to leverage your skills. Next book is First Gen, a memoir by Alejandra Campoverdi. This was such an affirming memoir, and it's about being a first generation college student. That is, being the first in your family to go to college. A lot of these lessons were things I had lived through, but I didn't have the terminology for. And while my mom went to college and got a degree, I was the first in my family to navigate the US college system, meaning I had to figure out FAFSA, applications, dorming, loans on my own, and while negotiating my parents for financial documentation that they were always very resistant to give me, even though I needed it. Lesson number 15 is the lonely hustle. Alejandra describes this as the space between experiences we share with our family and our loved ones. And as we go forward in our lives, this space widens and our drive to advance forward in life becomes less relatable to our families. This goes from applying for a job, an unpaid internship, a side gig, things that our families have not done in the same ways that we are trying to. So as we go on in life, the ability to relate to one another becomes more and more difficult. Our efforts to recalibrate and survive in new spaces can often be misunderstood as leaving our friends, our culture, or our families behind. Related is lesson number 16, breakaway guilt. This is being self-conscious about having more financial security than our loved ones. At the same time, we also feel this responsibility to make made our family's sacrifices worth it. As I'm 30 years old, which is the same age my parents immigrated from the Philippines to Europe, undocumented in the late 1980s. And I am at a point where I can move freely, but out of desire, not need and necessity. Lesson number 17, being a parentified child. It is overwhelming to manage our family's emotions and struggles. When I was growing up, it felt like it was my responsibility to read the room and to understand my parents' needs and maybe how to even avoid them if they were in a bad mood. I also needed to be this form filler outer and translator in many situations. In time, this created an inability to be present with my own needs. There's also a psychological term called hypervigilance, which is something it's hard for me to turn off, and that's reading what the room is like. What are people thinking? How do I say the next right thing? How do I keep things peaceful? Lesson number 18, and this one hurt to read. It's don't ask people who have never been where you are going for direction. Our immigrant families seldom know best about certain things because they've never done that thing in this country. It's really important for first generation kids, first and onlys, to find mentors and to find people that can guide you who have already been where you are wanting to go. And it's really hard to admit that your parents, your family members are not the resource to go to for something like this. This was a really powerful read for me. I really recommend this one. This is the one that hit the hardest. Next up is Top Story by Kelly Yang. So this is number 5 in a series that is geared towards middle-aged kids. And hear me out. It's about Mia, who is a young writer and is navigating life as a Chinese American with her family. In the book, she travels to San Francisco for a journalism program. While there, she learns about the history of Chinese Americans in San Francisco. Lesson number 19, and I'm probably not gonna pronounce this right, I apologize. But it's Zheng, which is making your family proud. Earn the better air in your house by way of accomplishments. If that's not like all of the family obligations and sense of responsibility and duty, I don't know what it is. I didn't learn about these things, but I wanted to mention them in this video in case you didn't know about them. But the book mentioned 3 acts that impacted Chinese immigrants and Chinese folks in the United States. And again, this is a book targeted at middle-aged school children, showing that it is never too early to show them what laws impact people's experiences. The Page Act of 1875, which banned Chinese women from coming into this country. The Chinese Exclusion Act. All Chinese people were banned, couldn't become citizens or vote. The California Alien Land Law Act of 1913. This prevented Asian people from owning or leasing land. Kelly Yang does an incredible job integrating history into her stories. And here's a couple more that I actually learned about. Lesson number 20, misbreed letters. She was a San Diego librarian with a lot of Japanese patrons. When they got sent to internment camps after Pearl Harbor, she wrote letters to them and sent supplies. You can check out the letters on the Japanese American National Museum, and I'll put a link at that in the description. Lesson 21. In 1911, a starving Native American man made it out of the woods and into Oroville, California. He was identified by anthropologists as the last of the Yahi people. They named him Ishi, which meant man in the Yahi language. The anthropologists learned a lot from him, and they forced him to live at the University of California, Berkeley Museum. He was showcased for all of his hunting and tool-making skills. They called him Living Exhibit and forced him to work among the remains of other Native Americans in the museum. He was highly popular and people went to ogle at him. Lesson 22 is about Mamie Tape. She was a Chinese girl who tried to go to school in San Francisco in 1885, and the principal wouldn't let her because she was Chinese. So she sued all the way up to the Supreme Court, and she won the right to go to school. And lesson number 23 is Angel Island, which is near Alcatraz Island, which is basically the equivalent of Ellis Island in New York, but in San Francisco, an island where immigrants were documented arriving into the country before being allowed in. Daytripper. I close out the month with a really awesome graphic novel. This is a stunning reminder that life is about all of the decisions that you make. You are a composite of those decisions, and you have to remember to live your life every day, and you can't just wait for life to happen to you. Lesson 24. On April 23rd, 1616, Shakespeare died on his 52nd birthday. The story is basically showing how the main character's life could go if he suddenly died at different points. So you should live life as if you were aware that it was running out. Not recklessly, but without regrets. Try new things. Learn and teach yourself things. Attempt your dreams and don't let them just sit there. So that's the end of all my learnings for January. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next month.